Out there later. I took Byron out to look at ADA stuff there. So, because even though it's an older building, we still have some ADA obligations for that. So, anyway.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our roll call. Guy Garcia and Andrew Bloom are not here tonight. Notice to the public: any member of the public wishing to address the governing board on a topic within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district but not on the agenda may do so during the public comment period identified in this agenda. By law, subjects not on the agenda cannot be acted upon by the board except to briefly respond, clarify, or refer to staff for review and presentation at a future meeting. The board president will recognize you for the public comment on those matters on the agenda at the appropriate time. Correspondence? Nothing. Nothing on the consent agenda. Okay, public comment.
Good evening. I don't know if any of you have received any comments, but I've heard from people about the shrinking reference section. They're kind of shocked by that, and to see the one whole wall of reference replaced with DVDs. I understand the DVDs circulate quite well, but still there's been some, where are the books, kind of response to that. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. Did the magazines kind of shrink too? I was in there the other day and there's not as many.
I don't think the magazine shrunk. The reference collection did. Most of the books were outdated or things that were more up to date on the computers. So, and we were trying to clear up some space in that row because people would gather in front of where the DVDs were, and it was kind of blocking off access to the kids section. So we were trying to come up with a way around that.
Okay. Any other public comments?
Just one comment, which is now that the library's website's been up, I like it a lot. I'm very pleased with it. I mean, you know, I had made some nitpicky comments about it when it first got launched, but I see now how they're using it, and I think they're using it fairly well. It's got some pretty decent content on it, and it looks really good. So, very good job.
Well, thanks. Yeah, they're still working on making improvements to it.
Yes, I mean, there's obviously gaps, but still, it's a good work in progress. So.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments? Okay. No guests or presentations. Director's report.
Okay, first thing is the budget report. We're trying out different styles of presenting the budget every month. There's 426 is our general fund, 428 is the building fund. I can't pretend that I know what all this stuff really means. Our accountant put it together and gave it to me right before she went on vacation, so I don't really know what all the details are. But basically, if we look at 426 at the bottom, that gives us how much we are plus at the very bottom there. It's the revenues less appropriations, so that's how much money we didn't spend that we had from the budget last year.
Okay.
And this represents through June 30th. We have until July 15th to make any accruals from this past budget year, and then we'll go into the next budget year. So this is pretty close to a final tally.
Okay. Any questions?
So I see where she has listed reserve for capital acquisitions. Well, we don't have a reserve for capital acquisitions right now, do we? Or a reserve for emergency operations?
I'm not really sure. She's been working with the Solano County people,
Uh-huh.
and she's been down there, down to Fairfield several times to try and sort out the real numbers. So, I mean, as far as I know, this is accurate.
Okay.
Do you want her to maybe come to one of our meetings so she can walk us through this, Joe?
Well, the concern that I have, the only concern I have is, I don't know that based on these numbers, we're gonna be able to do a Miller Building renovation. And we're gonna wanna have reserves set aside for repairs and for capital improvements. And it doesn't look like we have any reserves set aside. Well, we have reserves for, on the 426 side, we have reserves on the operating side, it looks like we have reserves. On the capital side, it doesn't look like we have any reserves. So I don't know, maybe that takes care of it. Although our reserve, if I'm reading these lines right, our reserve for capital acquisitions is only $29,000. That's not a very big reserve.
No, I think the 428 has to do with more of the building stuff.
That's just the revenue source, the building fund?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, tell you what, let me just take a look at it and maybe I'll just call you sometime later this week.
Okay, yeah, Jean is the best person to talk to about
Okay.
this stuff.
Okay. All right, children's activities?
Okay, well, we had somebody, an entomologist, come from UC Davis, and she gave a bug show for the kids. We had 96 people show up.
Wow.
And it was pretty cool because there were both specimens and live bugs.
Ooh.
The kids got to handle cockroaches if they wanted to.
Oh.
They had two different kinds of cockroaches, one from Madagascar, one from Central America someplace, and then these walking sticks the kids got to touch, and they both thought those were pretty cool. So that was a neat show. There was this one kid there who kept her at least an hour and a half late. He had so many questions for her about bugs.
How funny.
So it was pretty cool. But I talked to her afterwards. She said she didn't mind. So it was fun. That was a good show. This morning we had 4-H science experiments where they're doing different experiments with snails and also properties of water. And they had 48 people show up for that. We did a family movie night a couple weeks ago. They showed the Lego movie, had 67 people attend that. And right now we have 501 kids and 53 teens signed up for a summer reading club.
Great.
I know this isn't actually on the director's report items, but I was going to mention Sundays. I went last Sunday to check it out. It was pretty well attended. I talked with one of the employees who works Saturdays and Sundays, and she said Sunday was much busier than Saturdays usually are.
Very cool.
So that was good.
Kids getting their last minute homework done.
Yeah, kids and adults were there.
Yeah,
So I
excellent.
just stopped in the middle of the afternoon to kind of see what it was like. So enough people have gotten the word, so that's good.
And I see on the website that we're still going to be closed on the 19th, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Next one's continuing education. Catherine wanted to thank you for sending her to the American Library Association conference in Las Vegas. She thought it was really worthwhile. She saw lots of new stuff and got to talk to lots of people there.
I had another friend that went, and she said it was a good
Oh,
time.
yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, good. We're still trying to work her out going to Guadalajara. But she applied for the funding, and I asked last week whether she'd gotten the funding, and it seemed like they had lost her application. So they're still trying to sort that out. And the person that I'm dealing with is in Guadalajara, and her English isn't that good. So we're trying to communicate back and forth through kind of humorous emails that don't often make a lot of sense. But I was able to go and tour the state archives last week. That was interesting.
That's great, huh? Yeah.
Oh, you've been there?
I've been there, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they've got 6 floors of all the state records from all the different departments, except for the governor's offices. The governor's stuff only starts with Duke Majan. I guess the prior governors before that, they're housed usually at different universities. But since Duke Majan, all the governor's records are there as well. So that was interesting. The guy giving me the tour had pulled lots of items that were particular to Dixon history, so it was interesting. Susan Warren finished doing her conservation techniques webinar, and Catherine also finished her class on using social media to promote libraries too. So next one's re-roofing the Miller building. We had a problem with him getting a permit, but that seems to have been solved. And it was supposed to start this afternoon, but I didn't see any evidence of it having started, but he said he was supposed to start today. That's supposed to take around 2 weeks, he thought.
All right. Any questions? Any public comment?
I had a call about an hour ago from someone who couldn't be here in regard to concern about money. This would fall under the budget report part of this, but about money for, there's a particular concern, I guess, about the windows in the Carnegie disintegrating, and so there was a concern about if there's any money set aside for those types of repairs.
Yeah, I think we are going to try and tackle that, but I understand there's a fair amount of process that you have to go through since it's a historical building. I know that Pedro, our work person, is supposed to look at that and see what he can do.
Yeah, they can't be replaced with some other more modern type of window or anything like that, I know. So, but my understanding is they're in pretty bad condition, or at least some of them are. So, thank you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's on the list of things for him to do this year.
All right, any other public comments? All right, ongoing business.
Well, the first thing has to do with the land boundary issue that Catlin and I were working on together. And I have more updated information. I've got the old one and then some newer information from 2013-14 that the assessor's office provided me with. And one of the big questions we were trying to figure out was whether these TRAs are residential or business, and I didn't really realize that they could be both, and that
Yeah, they
most
can be
of them
both.
are.
Yeah. It seems to me, the 006 accounts are all Vacaville city limit accounts, okay? So to the extent that account is completely residential, obviously we should be, all those taxpayers should be in the Vacaville system and not with us. To the extent that, let's leave out the mixed for a second, to the extent that they're fully business, and there's only one or two 006 accounts that are that way, we can keep those. Those don't matter because there's no voting rights associated with those. To the extent that they're mixed, the question becomes, and the way these TRAs are drawn up, I think, is based on, they carve it up either by meets and bounds or by street boundaries, okay? So that a TRA is like a group of properties within a certain section that they have carved up based on street boundaries. So the really expensive ones are the, if you look down, the ones where that says both, that we could potentially lose a lot of income on. The one that's $14,998, which is the account 181, that's a both account. And the question becomes, can you ask the auditor's office, are they able to create two separate TRAs, one that's just business and one that's residential? If not, then unfortunately, unless we change our governance, we may end up having to surrender any account that has both residential and personal, or residential and commercial, to Vacaville. But if they're able to separate this into business and residential, then we can transfer residential to Vacaville and keep business. And I have a feeling it's done, some of these are north of the freeway and some are south. Now the 091 accounts, the two at the bottom, which amount to about the $14,000 worth of income to us, those are unincorporated area accounts. So I don't know why we couldn't figure out a solution that doesn't necessarily transfer, and it, you know, to the extent that they have residential properties in them, that we couldn't figure out a solution that doesn't disenfranchise those people but doesn't force us to transfer them to Vacaville. The 006 accounts, to the extent that they would contain any residential properties and to the extent that we would not be able to get them to create separate TRAs or delineate the boundaries differently, we would probably need to transfer to Vacaville, okay? But the 091 accounts, I think we should have a talk with Vacaville and say, hey, if we're giving you the 006 accounts, let's straighten this out for the voters that are in the 091 accounts and make sure they're not disenfranchised, okay? The other thing is that right now, if you're just looking at, you have two business accounts that represent about $4,000 worth of income. That's 16 and 168. Vacaville shouldn't get those under any circumstances, okay? But the real account is this one for 14,000, you know, this 181 account, and then possibly the first one at the top of the page, the 005 account. Those two have both residential and business in them, and the question becomes, is there a way for us to transfer the residential portion? Can they separate these into different TRAs or different boundaries? And then I think anything that's purely residential, and probably anything that's just unimproved, would have to be transferred to Vacaville, unless we fix governance. If you fix governance, you don't have to transfer anything.
Right.
If you don't fix governance, at a minimum, you have to transfer the residential, and you have to fix the ones that have both residential and business in them, or else potentially transfer those as well, okay?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay, so the real question becomes, one, can they create, can they redo boundaries and or TRAs to separate out business and residential on the ones that have both? And that's only for the 006s. For the 091s, the unincorporateds, do we need to transfer those two to Vacaville at all? Since those people they're not in Vacaville's boundaries, they're not in our boundaries, they're unincorporated. And so I don't know that there's necessarily a conflict for them, I'm not sure. Those would be my follow-up questions on that issue. Okay. Now, if you were able to keep the two unincorporateds, plus the two business accounts that are in Vacaville, and then possibly split the residential ones, the ones that are both, you're probably going to keep at least half the income that way, that you're potentially losing here.
So my suggestion, as I emailed to you, is that we sit down with county council and with other folks in Solano County who've already done some work on this issue, and see what their recommendations are and what else they can provide for us.
Are there other people that have done work on this?
There are all the memos that came out when I first gave you guys the information. The folks that had done the research on that, they've looked into it before. At least in the last, when I asked them, but also prior to that, in the last 5 years, they were asked to do it before. So,
all right.
Yeah, there's been work done on it already. We don't need to completely start again, but at least sit down with them and sort of figure out what we're looking at and what our options are. And then I think the question for this board is, given what our revenue loss is going to be, is changing governance a better model? Is losing the revenue a better model? But I think we need to have a really solid picture of what our options are in terms of the revenue.
Okay.
Well, this was really helpful.
Was
this
really
the auditors people that came up with this then? And do they have the APN numbers to back this up?
Oh, they sent me links suggested where to look on their website, and I went through and did a lot of work.
You had to do this yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, that's brutal. Roughly how many APNs, how many parcels are we talking per TRA?
Oh, it depended. There were lots
Anywhere
of
from
them.
30 to 50?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably had 15 sheets full of them.
Ooh, ouch. Yeah, see, part of the problem is that they created these TRAs. They're not in line with what the assessor's office exactly did. That's the problem. But the TRAs generally geographically, you know, delimited by, in other words, a TRA has parcels that are in a cluster, you know, in a particular area, okay? But the assessor's office, if you look at their APN numbers, the clusters don't match up. It doesn't match up with what the assessors did. So it's very frustrating because I think this was just done for accounting purposes. I'm not really sure why it was done, you know. And then the ones that are unimproved, you'd have a zoning already associated with that. I mean, there's either going to be a residential or a commercial zoning that's associated with that. But it just says unimproved. I assume, would we be able to know whether those were commercially zoned or not? Because if something's commercially zoned, chances are it's not going to be converted to residential zoning. It will be developed commercially. And so the question becomes, do we really want to give up unimproved parcels that might suddenly become, you know, giant Kaiser Foundation hospitals in a few years and be part of a very lucrative tax base? Yeah. So I think that if you're able to do it for the 024 account and for this 063 and 066 account, and actually then 201 as well, they're all marked unimproved. The question would become, are they zoned commercial or zoned residential?
Okay,
So
yeah,
are
that
they
I don't know. at
R1,
this point.
R2, R3, or, you know. Okay. Thank you for doing that. That's brutal. I thought that's what they were gonna do.
Any public comments on this issue? Nope. Okay. And it's just for information and or discussion, so there's no action taken on that. All right. B.
Next one is just the next part of the policies and procedures that we started last time.
Yeah. I have some comments.
Okay.
On 3110.1.5, it looks like Vanessa and Scott left us a note and asked if there were any other employees that were eligible. And if there aren't, then I think we ought to delete 3110.1.5. So the question becomes whether someone qualifies for these benefits. And maybe you could just find that out, because I think that section could just conceivably go away.
Okay.
All right, then
Yeah, I'll
under,
get you.
hang on. Under 3150.1, this is the same comment as before. We had actually talked about this before,
Oh, right.
about competitive salaries, and then the references to Solano, Yolo, and Napa.
Yeah.
Okay, same as the prior discussion on that item.
Yeah. Scott Holbrook said that he thought that that was probably a holdover from a prior director.
I think that's exactly right. At least the Napa and Solano reference. Okay, and then going over to hang on 1 second, I'm sorry. I just want to point something out in 3170.1 and 3170.4. We're specifically talking about library director or designee. And there's nothing wrong with that language, except in other places, we're just using library director. And so by implication, are we saying that, you know, in those other sections that you're not able to designate? In other words, we specify it's library director or designee. Everywhere else in these policies, we just say library director. Are you then able to designate if there's some other responsibility in another section? It's like the law has a very fancy Latin term for that, okay? But the point is, it's called expressio unis exclusio alterius, which means if you say it one way, are you excluding it the other way? And so the question becomes, you know, And it's just a comment. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, are we creating here a specific ability for you to designate where we're not doing that elsewhere, okay? And I think there are other places in these policies where we might want to give you the freedom to be able to delegate some of the responsibilities. Okay, that's just a comment, not necessarily a change.
Okay.
And then on I thought these were pretty good overall. On again, 3150.1, 3150.1.1, we're talking about competitive and YOLO, Solano, and Napa again. Or is that's just a repeat? And that was it for these. The one thing I noticed about the agenda, though, is we did not put the 3,000s back on for a second reading and approval. In other words, you had the 3,000 numbered policies on for a first reading the last time, and so this would have been first reading for the 3100s and second reading and approval for the 3,000s.
Okay, I was thinking we were gonna go through the entire thing and
Just
then
do the whole
approve it
thing
at
and then
once.
go approve it all at once?
That's what I thought we were
Oh,
gonna do.
that's fine,
but-
either way.
Okay.
But, you know, just so that we have a second reading of each of them, so that the public has two chances to comment before they're actually voted on. Okay,
Okay,
that's it for these.
okay. Yeah, the next one is the longevity pay. The attorney, oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, come forward.
Section 3180.4.3.1 seems to limit the employee's options for an appeal to a closed session. Other agencies that I'm aware of allow the employee to decide, to have the option of having something heard in an open session.
Which section again?
3180.4.3.1.
I have 3180.4.3.
It's above that
Oh,
for
it's
some
above
reason.
that.
Yeah, I don't know why it's up there.
Why do we have two section, we have a 31.8, should that be 3180.3.3.1?
It looks like,
I think
That would
it's
make more
it's marked
sense, wouldn't
wrong,
it?
yeah.
but that limits it to closed session. And I've known employees in other agencies who have wanted things heard in open session.
Actually, the Brown Act gives an employee for personnel matters the option to have it heard in open session if they so declare. And they have to be given at least 24 hours notice in advance, and then basically, I don't have my Brown Act in front of me, but and then be given the opportunity to have it held in open session. So that's probably a good point. We ought to have we ought to write some language into the effect that tracks that Brown Act language and allows the employee the opportunity to have it in public if they so choose. As personnel matters, normally they default to the confidential closed session, but you're right, the Brown Act does give that option to employees under its provisions. So why don't we, do you want to talk to Scott about that and see what he says?
Okay.
Okay, but there is a Brown Act section, and maybe we should consider tracking the language of the Brown Act on that. And that's, and then the, and that's under Government Code, blah. I'll have to get you the section, I don't have it in front of me. And that 3180.4.3.1 should actually, I think, be 3180.3.3.1.
Yeah, that
Okay.
would make sense.
All right.
Okay, thank you, because I know in some cases an employee might want their spouse present and they couldn't be present if it was in closed session, or they may want there have been situations, I think, where some of the employees would have wanted the public to be aware of what had happened.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Okay, the next thing was the longevity pay. Scott went and he rewrote this for an amendment to 3150.3.3. It was written such so the 4 employees that would be affected by it will get their longevity pay. There was an issue in the 2 of the people that are currently full-time started out as part-time, and so we weren't sure whether they would be awarded the longevity pay or not, so he rewrote it so it should cover that.
Right.
So it's basically it says calculations for longevity pay may include continuous service as a regular employee in either full-time or part-time service or a combination thereof for only those persons currently employed by the district at the time this policy was revised in July 2014, but shall also apply to any such employees thereafter employed by the district. Longevity pay for part-time services shall be prorated. So that makes it so that anyone in the past can't come forward and ask for longevity pay. It only affects the people currently employed.
Excellent. Any questions? Any public comments on longevity pay? All right. It's an action item. So do I have a motion?
The longevity pay one is an action item?
It says it's an action item.
Yeah, okay.
Looking
I'll
for
move.
okay, perfect. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, and we need approval of the minutes for July 19th.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Do we have any public comments about our minutes for July 19th, 2014? I'm sorry, June 19th, there's no future here. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And any new business?
No?
All right. Any announcements, Joe?
No.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.